Hi, how you doing? It's supposed to be a calm day today, but of course it isn't. The wind has not yet stopped. It's not as bad as it was yesterday. My annuals, I just don't want them to wait any longer, and so I'm going to go ahead and plant a whole bunch of things out today. I want to get these three pots along in front of the garage done. There's also pots along the driveway that I want to get done. There's three pots over next to in the rock garden area that I want to get done as well. And that should take care of a good portion of the annuals with just some left for the back deck. And then after that, I'm going to move on to the vegetable garden. And I think I'm going to plant out the butternut squash, the honeydew melon, the cantaloupe. So those are my plans today. And I thought maybe you'd like to hang out for a while and join me in that. My name is Sharon. I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. So I'm getting an early start, and it's still shady here in front of the garage. The front of the garage is going to be all geraniums and Dusty Miller, and I have light pink, dark pink, and geraniums, as well as Dusty Miller and dichondra. And so I actually drew out a little plan of the pot to see how many I could stick in there and where to stick them in particular, so that I have them equally spaced, as well as I have enough plants to do all of the containers where I want to put these particular plants. So I'm going to follow that plan. I think it should work. What I've done here is I just set out the mother plants. I call them the mother plants because these are the plants that I had overwintered and took cuttings from. So this is what I refer to as the light pink. It's a bicolor actually. And then I'm going to mix it up with the dark pink, which is kind of a reddish color. You'll see as I get into it. And so I have two mother plants of the light pink, which I believe are actually 6 geraniums or 3 geraniums in there. Yes, it is. And they're quite full of roots in those pots, so I'm sure they're going to be glad to get out of those pots. So just before I lay out all the rest of the plants, I'm just going to get these big ones potted in, and I'm going to dig a hole deep enough in the back, since these will actually have a front and a back because it's against the wall. There's no sense having trailing plants or back there, and I'd like the biggest plant to be back there. So that's deep enough, and this might be something getting it out of here. We'll see. I'd like it to come out as one big one. Yeah, it will. Okay, great. And I'm just going to set it so that the tallest part of it is right at the back. And then backfill around, smush it down. So according to my plan, I'm now going to flank this big one with 3 of the New Look Dusty Miller, one on either side and one in the front. I hope this turns out. I expect these Dusty Miller to get quite a bit bigger. I hope they do. And then I'm going to go with 3 of the dark pink. And these are the geraniums that I started from cuttings back in, I don't know, February. There is a video on taking the cuttings from the mother plants and starting them in the house. So these are going to go here. And one over here. one in the front. So yeah, those silver dusts need to kind of grow up and fill that space to give some contrast. Then in front here, I'm going to put 2 silver dust, which is also Dusty Miller, but it's the cut leaf kind. Oh boy, it should have been transplanted, I think, quite some time ago. And then, just for trailer, I'm going to put in 3 dichondra. So there's room there. I have some bigger ones and some of the ones that are smaller. There's a video on that as well where I split the dichondra. I bought 3 and I made 10. And so they're going to fill up the rest of this. So I'm going to put the bigger ones on the front, on the very front, and then, for example, these are 2 small ones, so I think I'm going to plant them together. Not sure what that's gonna, roots are gonna look like there. Oh, poor silver dust. All right, so they've rooted, but you know, the plants are still quite small. I think I'll just plant the 2 of them together there. And then one over here on this side. Should grow quite big. Trail down quite a lot. I think that eventually that should look pretty nice once it settles in and fills in a bit. And the next 2 are going to be just the same, except the middle one is going to start with dark pink at the back and then light pink, but the rest of the filler will be the same. Funny light on here now, half sun, half shade. It's not even 9 a.m. yet. So these actually stay in the sun all day long. And you know, petunias always do really well for me in these pots, which is usually my go-to. I kind of change from, you know, I change up from year to year. I did do the Vista Supertunia pink bubblegum one year, and oh my gosh, actually I did it more than 1 year. I did it 2 or 3 years in a row, I think, and they were really outstanding. They were beautiful. But you do tend to get tired of the same thing year after year. You know, for one plant, this sure has some root structure, this geranium. I don't know what series it is or what it's called. I still am thinking that it's a Calliope. I'm going to do 3 of the New Look. Just flanking this, 1 on either side, 1 in the front. And then some light pink geraniums. I trimmed all the blooms off these not long ago, so they're back to blooming. I just wanted them to direct a little bit more energy to green growth instead of pushing out all the blossoms. But you know, I think geraniums, I think that they are so willing to, so eager to bloom. Not entirely certain that that makes a whole lot of difference to a geranium, whether it's blooming or not. So there's 2. I still think that's a really pretty combination. And instead of going with something white, that's why I'm going with the Dusty Miller. And then there's going to be a couple of these of the silver dust just in front of the light pink. There's supposed to be another light pink right in the middle here in front. And then 3 of the dichondra. And again, I'll put the kind of the nicest one right in the front, the fullest one right in the front, and 2 smaller ones on either side. The pots in front of the garage are done. Now I'm going to get going on these 3 pots that line the driveway. It's got these upper pots as well, and for those I have some bacopa and some nemesia. I've never grown nemesia before, or nemesia. I'm going to give them a try in here this year, and I almost always grow bacopa on the top. One of the reasons is because the very last one is in a bit more of a shady spot, and I need something that will handle both that sun and shade. Geraniums did okay in all of these last year. I think it's a pretty good option for, you know, areas that get a little bit of shade. And the bacopa usually does well as well. The ones in the sun always bloom better. Actually, the one in the middle, which gets just a tiny bit of midday shade, that one always seems to do the best. This one is in sun all day long. It's got just a wee bit of shade now from the railing, but otherwise it is in sun all day long. So I have quite a few of the geraniums left. I think I counted 14 of the light pink and maybe 11 of the dark pink, and I have lots of Dusty Miller left, and they're going to go on the bottom. Same colors, you know, I just like it to look a little bit matching with the front pots. So, which turned out okay. If I have any of the geraniums left of the cuttings, I'm going to stick them into the front pots, I think. In here, if I have, you know, 3 of one color, 4 of another color, plus some Dusty Miller just for the bottom, that's going to be a lot. So I'm just going to get going on this first one to show you my layout. I changed my mind and I'm at the middle pot. The light is just a little bit better here. So I just thought I'd go over these plants in case some of you have never grown them. And this one is bacopa. So it cascades down really nicely. It usually comes right over and kind of covers this size of bowl. I don't really like it to hang a lot lower on these pots. Another one that I've often used is a small petunia. Is it Fantasy series? I forget. But any of the ones that trail too far down, then they start getting mixed up with the plants on the bottom. So you can't just, you know, well, I suppose you could, but it kind of begins to interfere with the plants down low. And the nemesia, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you, the bacopa doesn't grow very tall. It grows 12 to 18 inches in spread. It only grows 4 to 6 inches high. And it says it's a heavy, it needs a lot of water, heavy water usage. That's important to pay attention to when you're pairing plants. And that's one of the reasons that I chose the nemesia. This one is called Whimsy Apple Blossom. And this one grows 20 to 25 centimeters wide and about 25 to 30 centimeters high, so about a foot high. So it's going to come up more and spread out, whereas the bacopa will trail. And as well, this one says it also needs lots of water. So I thought the two of them would go well together in the same pot. I'm quite used to watering daily. The geraniums I won't need to, or the dusty miller or dichondra, but these little pots I'm sure I will water at least once a day once they get filled with roots. So I am just going to plant the bacopa first. I already have them heavily watered. They're fully saturated. These top pots, though, are rather dry, but I'll get to watering them in a minute. Ooh, all kinds of tags. You know, normally I don't really care to go with even numbers. I always like to go with odd numbers in a circle, but that just wasn't going to work with these. So it's going to be 2 and 2. I feel like by the time they spread out that one might not be able to tell. We'll see. Good, so that already fills it up quite nicely. I got these planters long ago, quite long ago, and they have the little light standard at the top as well, the solar lights. They have been, oh gosh, it's been a number of years. I'd have to go back into my photos to see just how long I have had them. It's been a long time. And then when I bought it, they originally came with sort of these cheap plastic pots at the top as well as at the bottom. And they weren't very stable. So we bought these big plastic, heavier pots at the bottom. Someone's cutting grass. And actually sunk that pot, that cheaper plastic pot, into there. And we have it stapled with great big stakes way down at the bottom, like U-shaped stakes drilled into the pot and going through into the soil. So it really is very, very stable. Like you just can't move it. This one is a different story, but this one we don't seem to have any trouble with. But of course, you know, the pots sometimes get a little top heavy, and so you need to take those kinds of measures to keep them stable once they're all planted up. So one more Nemesia. They're rooted really well, so I just tease all those roots. And I'm just going to keep one of those tags in case I need to know. When I bought these, they were quite full of blossoms, and I see that there is lots of buds coming, and they're supposed to be scented, although I haven't actually smelled anything just yet, but I think they said it vanilla scented. All right, so that's how that's gonna look. I had considered going with the blue bacopa to start, but then I changed my mind to the white. I don't know, 3, 1, 2. Maybe I'll get one with color. Three of the light pink and 3 of the dark pink. And then maybe I'll do a ring of Dusty Miller in the middle, sort of just offset. So that would be 4 Dusty Miller. And I'll use the silver dust. I think that should be all right. I'm going to plant that up like that and see how it goes. Well, I think that will look quite nice. I have chosen not to go with anything to spill over in the front here or in these pots. So the only thing they need to do is survive the wind today. Well, not just today. I think that is just, I mean, you have to count on the wind here. That's all there is to it. I could always add, if it looks like they're leaning or too much, I could always add some small stakes, and then that would support them. At least until they get good and rooted. All right, so this pattern is going to be copied in both of the other pots as well. All right, on to the vegetables. I have 5 butternut squash transplants that are looking quite nice. And this is the early butternut hybrid. It's one of the shortest day butternut squash that you could get. And I'm going to grow all 5 of them in this 4x12 raised bed. These are not, they're hardened off somewhat, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this row cover on it to protect from the wind, and as well I have shade cloth that I'm going to put on for these next few hot days while they kind of harden off and get used to their new surroundings, and so they don't wilt or they don't stress or have any kind of transplant shock. So I'm just going to get this uncovered. I already have the holes prepared, and we'll just go through that in a second. Okay, I mentioned that I got the soil prepared yesterday, and essentially what I did was I dug 5 holes and I added about, I'm going to say 2 gallons of compost along with the, kind of dug it all up together. So there's compost mixed in here. I'm going to create kind of like a depression to plant in, so that when I water, I will probably most often water these by hand with rainwater or with warm water. And so it will be able to hold the water in this depression. These are semi-bush, I think that's what they're called, semi-bush squash. What that means, I'm not sure. They still vine, as far as I know. One other thing I'm going to do for a couple of these, because I'm quite curious, is I'm going to add some of this H-start to the planting hole. I'm going to say about a tablespoon, and I'm just going to mix that in a little. And when you plant, or when you have starts of any of the squash family or the cucumber family or the melon family, they don't like transplanting, and you do have to take some care when you go to transplant. And so the best way I have found is to support the stem with your 2 fingers, just like that, and turn it upside down and always gently squeeze the top, and don't do anything else with that root ball. You want your planting hole prepared. You want to set that down. Oops, there's the tag. You want to set that down into the planting hole and backfill. And you want to be quite gentle about that whole process. Give it a slight push, nothing too strong. And you shouldn't go any deeper than those seed leaves, which are these leaves that are sort of yellowing. You shouldn't go any deeper than that with any of this family. And so I like to do this, we live in a dry climate, and these are raised beds, and there's really no risk of them flooding or staying too wet. And so when I water, which again, as I said, it'll be by hand with a watering can with warm or rainwater if I have it. If I don't have rainwater, we fill the rain barrels with water, and just to allow that chlorine to dissipate as well as to warm the soil. And I do like to water any of the cucumber, squash, melon, or peppers with rainwater. I find it beneficial. So I'll just go ahead and plant the other 4. Same process, just, really gentle, and try not to disturb that root ball at all because they don't like root disturbance. So I'll get the rest of the squash planted. All right, so I got all 5 of them planted, and I could see that there is just a wee bit of wilt that's happening with some of the bigger leaves. That's fairly normal, I think, with a transplant on a hot and really sunny day. So I'm going to quickly put the row cover on as well as the shade cloth to protect them from the wind and from the sun, and then I will gradually sort of harden off in place, I suppose is a good way to put it, where I'll take the shade cloth off for the mornings maybe, and then put it back on during the heat of the afternoon. It's going to be a hot few days, so I'm going to make sure these stay well watered and shaded as much as possible. And there it is with the shade cloth on. Now I'm going to go ahead and plant in the melon. I have 3 cantaloupe and 3 honeydew melon that I have transplants I'm going to try this year. All right, so like I said, I have 3 honeydew and 3 cantaloupe. And the soil is prepared in the same way. I dug 6 holes and I amended with a bit of compost, and as well I put in here and there I put in a bit of H-start. I want to see the difference on it on various plants. So on this I've put it in these 2 planting holes, but not that one. And basically on the south side here is where I've added it. So same idea with the melon, is just support that there, squeeze it a couple of times until it releases. Don't pull. You try and get that. It's kind of like trying to release a cake from a pan. You don't want to pull it out. And set it in gently. Support it while you backfill. Gently firm it in. The success with planting these kinds of things, melons, squashes, cucumbers, when planting transplants, is a gentle hand. That is the key to these. And so I'm not too concerned about it being too low, planting it too deep, because what's going to happen is these are kind of going to start vining and they're going to bend over anyway. So I'm not too concerned about how deep they go, but if you were planting them deeper, you would not want to go past the seed leaves, that first set of leaves that comes out from a seed. And again, I'm planting them in this depression so that it'll hold water when I water them. And I'm going to get those planted up pretty quick so that I can get them watered and get the shade cloth on them. So that's going to be it for me today. The sun is strong, it's nice and warm, and it's getting a little bit too hot for me to continue working outside. I brought the tomatoes back in here. Every time I turn around, they need watering. And so they are not going to get transplanted today, nor will the cucumbers, the cucamelon, or the zucchini. I will save those for another day as well. Just thanks very much for hanging out with me today. I do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again. See you.